The Russian war of aggression against Ukraine is undoubtedly a tragedy. But like any tragedy, it attracts a lot of amazing people from around the world who disagree with tyrants and dictators and do the best they can to help Ukrainians. Our guest today is a veteran from the United States who volunteered to train and prepare Ukrainian soldiers for combat. He shares his valuable experience with the Ukrainian defenders, helping them fight against the Russian invaders. Dear friends, meet Bradley Crawford from the United States.
My name is Brad Crawford. Guys call me call sign Top. Uh, I've been doing the military thing in Ukraine and in the United States Army now for about 20 plus years. Uh, with my military service in the United States, I served almost 2 decades in the United States Army. Most of my time I was in the infantry, everything from light infantry to mechanized infantry with the Bradleys to uh, all the big boy weapons, as we know. Served in many units, many divisions, uh, and I also spent 4 years of my military time as a combat advisor in the United States Army. Uh, I served with the 1st and 353rd Infantry Regiment, which was the precursor to the SFAB, or Security Force Assistance Brigade. We were literally the experimental brigade that helped formed SFAB before it became an official Army unit. So I was working combat advisor work. We were getting guys ready to deploy to work with the Afghan and Iraqi armies. And I was what we call a OCT. Okay. I was basically a combat controller trainer at the National Training Center at Fort Irwin, California, and also at the Joint Readiness Training Center in the United States. That's in Louisiana.
Brad, I wonder what made you join the military. The reason I'm asking is because in Ukraine, despite the overwhelming number of active servicemen, you can rarely find a professional military. Most people, like me, for example, have volunteered. What motivates a man or a woman to join service?
Oh, when I was growing up as a kid, uh, my grandma always told me I was 6 years old running up a hill with a plastic gun and throwing plastic grenades with my with my family members and stuff like that. My family has been a big part of the armed forces. A lot of my family members have served in the armed forces. I definitely wanted to take that route. I got out of high school as quick as I could, and and the first chance that I got, I was 17 years old when I went to the recruiting center, and I signed up for the United States Army. At 17 years old, I was already heading off to basic training and doing my thing down at Fort Benning, Georgia. I've always wanted to be in the service. It was never about money for me. It was never about fame or glory or none of that other stuff. Uh, it was just a job uh, and a profession that I wanted to do, and I wanted to serve my country and be the best I could as a soldier. And some people, they go in, they maybe do one term, which is very honorable for them, and it's an honorable thing to do. But for me, I decided to stick with it, stay in, and did my full time and retired and got out.
Brad, what was one of the most challenging moments during your service in the U.S. Army?
Well, I'll tell you what. When we were in Fallujah and Ramadi, it was a pretty hot situation. Uh, we walked in there with the whole battalion, and we walked out of there with a lot less guys. And even I was wounded during that time in Iraq. Took some significant damage, and actually was dinged up a couple times. So I would say that was probably one of my hardest times, uh, at least combat wise. But there's other situations as well. You know, being a soldier, it's very hard kind of pick these out and just talk about little stories. I mean, these are hour-long stories that we talk about, and we have a lot of details and things like that. So, uh, but I would definitely say Iraq, at least in the start. The start 2003 and 2004 was a very, very, very terrible time.
Can you tell us what brought you to Ukraine? What motivated that choice?
It was during the start of the war. I got a phone call from a buddy of mine, and he actually served here in Ukraine. He was a U.S. Army soldier. He actually trained guys up in Yavoriv before the war with some of the joint task force operations that were going on here with NATO and other countries. He gave me a call and he said, "Hey, did you see the news?" And I said, "No, no." And he's like, "Go turn on the news." And then I see Russia invading Ukraine. And I just looked at the TV and I said, "Oh no." I said, "This is really bad. This is really bad." And then at that time, I was running a tactical training company back in the United States. And I said to myself, during this time, I said, I've been training for almost 20 years to fight this kind of a war. I do not agree with what Russia is currently doing. And then I heard President Zelensky say that they were looking for foreign volunteers. And I decided at that time, I said, good men stand up to bad people. And if I don't come over here and help, who will? And I had the opportunity to do it. Since I'm retired, I had the finances to do it, and I had the motivation to do it. So I came over here and I did my best, especially during the beginning of the war. Things were kind of fuzzy, but came in to help you guys and assist you the best way I could.
Brad, how did your friends and family react when you told them that you were going to Ukraine?
It was a mixed bag reaction. Uh, Most of my family agreed with what I was doing. I had some of my family not agree with what I was doing. It was kind of like a 70% of my family agrees with what I'm doing, and 30% did not.
Do you feel like your family is proud of what you're doing here in Ukraine?
I definitely know that my family's proud. Uh, I actually went back on leave in December and January and got to see my family, my children, and everybody else. And there was no person that I saw back home that was not proud of what I did.
Can you talk a bit more about what exactly do you do here in Ukraine as a military instructor?
What we do is we work with Ukrainian brigades and specialized units to provide assistance, combat advisory assistance, and training. Uh, we focus primarily on infantry training, basic training, non-commissioned officer training, and any kind of specialty training that the commander would like to see us do. Uh, Primarily, what we do is we go down to the combat brigades and we work with the combat brigades. So we work with the brigade commanders. We'll go there, we'll do an assessment for maybe a week or so. Then we'll come up with a viable training plan based on the brigade commander's recommendations. And then after that, we'll actually deploy our mobile training teams and our guys to assist those combat brigades. Uh, Primarily, that's what we do. And we've been doing that for quite a long time now. We've trained about 22 separate combat brigades here in Ukraine, and we've trained almost over 5,000 soldiers since we've been here. So we've been doing this for a long time, and we have a lot of respect and admiration from the guys that we work with. And the Ukrainians are very happy to work with us. And the only thing I can say about that is I wish I had more guys so we could help more people. But sometimes we have to put guys on a schedule. We'll be working with one brigade, and then I have to tell another brigade, sorry, we'll have to get back to you in a month or two, And so it's a very good feeling working with these guys, and I really do appreciate being here and having the honor to work with these soldiers.
American veterans who have military background, is there a chance for them to join your team in Ukraine and work together?
Yes, we have a website. It's I believe it's tcag.org. You can go on there. There's actually a join tab where guys can go on there and then they can fill out an application. Once we get that application, our guys in the United States actually process the application. They do an initial interview with the people in the United States. They'll run all their information, make sure everything's legitimate, and everything's good. And then once we actually identify that the candidate is viable, then we do what we call a commander's interview, where they come, or where I talk to them on camera, and I ask them specific questions. It's just an interview process, and then from there we work to get them there here to Ukraine, and we actually have a very stringent training program for the team, where we actually train these guys up on Ukrainian tactics, culture, traditions, all these kind of things, to prepare them to be combat advisors. And so the answer to your question is absolutely. It's just, you guys have to remember is that we're an all volunteer organization. And a lot of people don't understand what volunteer means. It means you're a volunteer. You're here on your own recognizance, and you're here on your own finances. And we do get a stipend, funds from donors and stuff to help some of these guys come over here and pay for some of their things. We actually pay for all the housing and the transportation and all those kind of things, but a lot of it's on them. And it's an honorable thing to be a volunteer.
Brad, I wonder this, based on your experience, Ukrainian soldiers, are they different or similar to the US soldiers? Do you have the same connection with the Ukrainian soldiers as with your American comrades back in the United States?
Ukrainian soldiers act pretty close to how American soldiers act. Everything from the downtime and the joking to taking things seriously when it's time to do business. Those guys are doing business. They're training. They're working hard. They're trying their best to learn and to do the things that they need to do to, train and survive. So when I work with the Ukrainian soldiers that we train, I feel a deep connection with these guys. It's our mission as instructors to make sure that we can get these boys home and get them home alive to their mothers and fathers, their sons and daughters, their grandmothers and grandfathers. We're here to help them get home to their families, and we take our job very, very seriously when it comes to training, and to make sure we give these guys the highest level of training. And one of those things with that high level of training is we give these guys a high level of motivation, and they really appreciate most times when we come out train with these guys, training with us international guys. It gives them a lot of spirit and a lot of motivation. And there's one key word that I always say, which I say it to all our instructors, and I said it yesterday to a couple of Ukrainian instructors as well. I said, we give them hope. We give them hope that they're going to come back alive. They're going to give them hope that they can go up there to the front and they can come back home. And that's one of the things that we do.
By the way, speaking of training, what can you say about the military planning and troops leading process in Ukrainian army? Is it different from the American army?
From what I've seen since the start of the war to now, things are actually getting a lot better. I've actually been in some of these battalion and brigade level command posts. Back in 2022, seeing guys planning an operation where they were literally using a regular map and drawing on it with military markers without acetate or anything on the top of it, and kind of working at a different level, with a couple guys with some radios and some laptops. Now, though, things are getting a lot more advanced, and you walk into a battalion or brigade command post, you got computer screens all over the place. You got TV screens everywhere. You got drones giving drone feeds. You got cameras from towers that are looking on every single part of the battle space. You got operations officers, intelligence officers. You got logistics officers working, buzzing around. It's crazy. Uh, the last one of these command posts I walked in, I literally said to myself, I said, uh, 5 years ago, if I would have walked into a place like this, I would expect these guys to be wearing American uniforms because it was that professional. These guys, from what I've seen when the war started to now, things have gotten a lot better. And the military planning process, of course, things take time. And I'll say this about the Ukrainian army. I'll be very, very, very blunt about it. We're in the middle of a war. Uh, usually, when you start a war, you're stuck with what you got. You're stuck with your tactics. You're stuck with your equipment. You're stuck with your procedures. But the Ukrainian army has literally, in a time of war against the second largest army on the planet, changed everything fundamentally and doctrinally in their army during a time of war, and that is something that is very, very difficult to do. Very, very difficult to do. And I always say that to everybody that I talk to doing these interviews. I'm very blown away on the operational effectiveness of the Ukrainian army. It's amazing. And not to mention, just on a funny note with that, you guys could really, take anything and turn it into anything because everybody's a MacGyver kind of guy, and Ukrainian guys, they can really, really, really make something out of nothing. So I think the Ukrainian army is doing an excellent job with TTPs. And the other thing, military decision making process, MDMP. I'm seeing them doing that a lot now too. That's a Western thing. And let me tell you, they're getting pretty effective at it. So I would say, answer to your question, they're catching up, and they're catching up at a pretty fast rate. And there's going to come a point where we're going to hit that apex, and I think the Ukrainian army is going to be right there on par with the Western armies in Europe.
Brad, I wonder, what was your biggest discovery about the Russian troops?
I trained in the United States Army for almost 20 years to fight these guys. And we'd go to the National Training Center in Fort Irwin, California. We'd do full military maneuvers. They didn't call them the Russians out there, of course. They called them the Krasnovians, right? But they had the uniforms with the little red stars on them and everything. We all know who they were talking about, right? But we trained doctrinally and professionally. We trained for 20 years to fight against the Russians, and we were always told if we went to war with the Russians, it would be like a Rocky Balboa, toe to toe, like blow to blow fight. We'd lose a platoon, they'd lose a platoon. We'd lose a tank company, they'd lose a tank company, and it was just back and forth, back and forth. Operationally, when I first came to Ukraine, and I seen the way that the Russians were maneuvering, I seen the way the tactics, techniques, and procedures that they were using. Yeah, it blew me away. And when it went down to some of these operational areas, I'm not going to say exactly where I was, but I seen a couple of these wrecked out because I wasn't always in the safe spots. And most of the time I do training, I'm not in the safe spots either. All right. But I seen a lot of these wrecked out tanks and vehicles, and we're walking up to these vehicles, and you got reactive armor panels without explosives in them. You got gunner stations without seats. Like, how are you supposed to fire a gun in a tank when you can't even sit down in a seat? Right? You have critical components of these tanks and these pieces of equipment that were missing, like critical parts. And this was supposed to be the Russian bulldog, the second largest, baddest army in the world. And not only that, half their vehicles were breaking down because the tires were getting blown out, because they would never take them out of the motor pool and rotate them and change positions in the sun. So, it just showed when they came across the border, especially, and all times during this war. It's just showing the operational inherent weakness of the Russian army, and they really, really, even now, haven't pulled it together. I mean, operationally, they outnumber us in most factors 10-1, but they can never do land, air, sea battle. They can't do full spectrum warfare. They can't ever pull it together. They can't coordinate attacks. They can't. It's all uh, task force based group attacks. You don't see like what we thought we would see, like whole Soviet armies, moving as one big anvil, moving across, the open steppes of the East. No, you see guys on motorcycles and bikes and pickup trucks, and you know a tank company here, or an armored company here, or something like that, just moving independently with some infantry behind them. I was very surprised about the Russian army's effectiveness. I thought that in the first days of the war we were in big trouble, but I seen over time that was not the case.
What's been the most rewarding part of working with Ukrainian defenders?
For me, the most rewarding part of working with the Ukrainians is seeing them succeed, and seeing them accomplish something. We worked with a lot of units, especially at the beginning of the war. We came to a lot of these units, and the guys were demoralized. They were like, well, you know, we got a situation here. We don't know if we're going to make it out of this. We don't know how it's going to go. And we would take these guys, and the first couple of days we'd start training with them. They'd be like, well, I don't know if this is going to be work or not. And then after a couple of days, they were like, well, we're actually operating as a platoon. We're actually doing some real dynamic stuff. I mean, we're doing like react to contact, where they're doing flanking maneuvers and all these other kind of things against the enemy force, and they really start feeling like they're part of a team, and they really start feeling like they're part of a unit, and they really start feeling like they can accomplish something. And you start seeing that motivation and that discipline with the guys get better, and you start actually seeing them form as a combat unit and start doing things together. And that's the best feeling for me, that I'm actually helping these guys, survive here, and I'm helping them the best I can with getting home, uh, because I know as a soldier, fighting in my own wars in the past, how it feels to go to war and not have that feeling if you're going to make it back or not.
Brad, how has the war in Ukraine changed your perspective on life or war itself?
Let me put it this way. When I was in the United States Army, I thought I saw war. I've been in a lot of war. I understand what war is. I understand what it is to lose friends and loved ones and all those people. Uh, but I've never seen the scale of war like I've seen here. I mean, it makes those places in the Middle East and all those other places a walk in the park. I mean, those guys in Bakhmut, they were fighting just as hard as we were when we were in Fallujah. They were kicking down doors, but the thing about Fallujah is we didn't have drones flying at us, and we didn't have FAB fab bombs coming in, or glide bombs coming in, and all this other stuff, and heavy artillery, and there's a big difference between the two. Uh, when I think of war here, I've been up close and personal. I've been on frontline positions. Uh, I've been in training areas that are pretty close to the front, 20 kilometers or less to the front. I've had artillery fly over my head when I'm training guys and teaching them how to fire AK-74s online at targets. We had Russian artillery flying over our dang heads, hitting 600 meters on the back of a hill. Had MLRS coming in the middle of the night when I'm training Marines, and smash our positions about 9 times. And we're lucky to get out of there without anybody getting hurt. all these things that I talk about, you would never see these in Iraq or Afghanistan. The enemy did not possess uh, the ability to do such attacks or destructive damage. I mean, we'd have guys that would fire mortar rounds at us, or maybe get into the ambush with a couple guys with some rifles, RPKs, and some RPGs or something like that. But you wouldn't see the kind of effects like that. So it's just changed my opinion on what war can really be. And you know, ever since I've been a soldier, I've never been one to relish war. I've been one to hate war, and I really do hate war. Uh, but uh, I know it's a necessary evil because, like I said before, when we started the interview, I said, "Good men stop bad men," and you know, bad men start wars. So, you know, we have to step in and we got to stop these guys. And you know, I just hope that this war can end. I wish it could end. I wish it could end in the next second. I wish it would end in the next minute. Because I've been here with the Ukrainian people pretty much almost the entire time. I took a hiatus for a little bit, but I've seen the devastating effects of this war, and I just hope that you know, in answer to your question, that this war can end because uh, this war is very devastating.
What do you think people outside of Ukraine misunderstand the most about the situation here? What is the biggest misconception about the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
I'll be honest with you. Most Americans can't even find Ukraine on a map if you asked them. You know, I'm sorry to say this, but it's true. You know, I think a big misconception is a lot of people just don't understand like how big of a war this really is and how many lives that it affects. You know, we have a front line that's almost 1,500, 2,000 kilometers long, and we have almost 2 million soldiers fighting each other every day on that line. There hasn't been combat that large since the end of World War II. I think if you looked at it, even the Gulf War, the numbers would be a little less, or even the Korean War. I think the Korean War would probably be about the same. But there hasn't been a war like this since the 1940s, and the rest of the world sits back and watches this, or just goes about their daily day, and they don't even know things are going on. If they do, they only see especially in the United States, they'll see like a snippet. It'll be like a 30-second snippet on the news or something where they'll watch, oh, Kiev got hit by a couple missiles, Mykolaiv got hit by a couple missiles, and Kharkiv got hit by a couple missiles. Bad, Russia's bad. That's it. 30 seconds. That's what they see. So, big misunderstanding for the world is how it actually affects them. Listen, Russia is not going to sit back and just let Ukraine survive. They're going to try to defeat us or try to destroy us. And also, they're not just going to sit back and let NATO do whatever they want to do. They're going to try to dictate policy with NATO and the rest of the world. And we have to understand that Russia is a belligerent nation, that at any time, our peace and security throughout the world can be affected by these people. And we have to take them very seriously, very, very seriously, because if we do not, there's going to be a time where they're going to try to test the world, or they're going to try to do something. And I'm surprised they haven't done it yet. But I'm telling you, that time is slowly coming. And the world's going to have to stand up and react to it. If the world does not stand up and react to it, there's going to be dire consequences, I believe. Yeah.
And speaking of the world, do you think other nations must have their boots on the ground in Ukraine?
I don't. I don't really think that. I don't think that for two reasons. Number one, it can cause a much larger regional conflict. Look, Russia's already said they've made it very clear if there's any NATO boots on the ground that Russia will retaliate. And I know for a fact, I think everybody knows for a fact that they will retaliate. Uh, I do not agree with sending foreign troops in here. What I do agree with is ramping up the military industrial capacity of Europe and actually providing Ukraine with the proper tools to win. We have always said this since the start of the war. Ukraine has, President Zelensky has. All right, give us the tools and we'll finish the job. That's what when I hear the European Union and I hear all these countries in Europe and NATO countries talking about sending in peacekeepers to Ukraine, I just ask myself, what's that going to do? They're not going to be on the forward areas. They're going to be in the rear somewhere. The only thing that they're going to be is just static targets for the Russians, because the Russians have ballistic missiles that can hit anywhere inside the country. We all know that. So what the European countries should do is increase their manufacturing capacity and their military industrial capacity and give the Ukrainians what they need to win the war. And I say that about a lot of things, because if the United States wouldn't have been dragging their feet and actually gave Ukraine the military weapons from the start in 2022 and continued to give them large supplies of weapons, we would have probably had 100,000 more troops on the front line right now. We would have probably been in a much more advantageous position than we are right now.
I wonder, have you met people in the United States who either didn't understand what you were doing in Ukraine or were hostile to you because of your work here? And generally, what do Americans think about your work in Ukraine?
I've actually talked to a lot of folks like that. And it's, again, because a lot of those misconceptions, this is not our war to fight. What's another thing they say? They say a lot of things like that. There's Nazis in Ukraine, which we all know that's not true. What else? It goes on and on and on and on and on. We don't need to spend money on Ukraine. Well, we can either spend money in Ukraine or we can have a much larger war where we're going to spend 1 million times more money. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. And what I try to do, I try my best to just talk to those people in a civil way and just try to debate with them. And if they don't understand, then I mean, it's kind of time to move on.
Is there a message that you would like to share with people back home in the United States, maybe with your friends or relatives or people generally watching this video?
Yeah, one thing I would say is everybody just open up your eyes, just see what's going on around us. Just look at the way Russia's treating Ukraine. Look at the devastation and everything the Ukrainian people are going through. And we have to, as a people, stand up against these adversaries like Russia and Iran and China, these people that want to bring down the world and destroy world order, and for the folks in the United States, if you do agree with defending Ukraine, call your congressmen, call your senators, call your representatives back home and demand that our government actually helps Ukraine and that we actually hold Russia accountable. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent, but I have yet to hear my current administration hold Russia accountable for anything. And Russia was the one that started this war. Russia was the one that invaded Ukraine. Russia has been the one that has committed war crimes. They committed a serious war crime 2 days ago, bombing that playground and killing those kids and everybody else that they killed. That was a civilian target. That was a blatant war crime. And nobody, not even the ambassador to Ukraine from the United States, said the word Russia. I don't know any time in our history where we've actually let that slip by or let that get by.
The US Army is undoubtedly some of the most advanced and experienced military forces in the world, and valuable experience provided by volunteers like Bradley is really hard to overstate. Due to his efforts, Ukrainian soldiers acquire precious knowledge that lets them perform their tasks and safely return home from their missions. And it's not just another case of humanity and decency shown by people from distant lands who come to Ukraine to help. It's also a solid proof that in this fight against Russian terrorism, Ukraine is not alone. My dear friends, I'm Operator Starsky. Thanks for watching.